So, does video game preservation have a bleak future? I would say, is that future even already here? I mean, I originally was planning to have this as a statement rather than a question. But the more that I look into this topic, the more that I realize that pretty much the gaming community is doing a really good job of preserving, classic games. But I don't know if I can say the same for the video game companies themselves who make these games. So I'm Double Pulse. Welcome back to Infyniti Gaming. I'm here with LMAOMack 27.
Yeah. What's going on,
Yo,
everybody?
yo,
What's
yo.
up?
What up? We're back with another exciting gaming discussion. And today I want to talk about video game preservation and its very bleak, unfortunate future. Because I don't know if you know this, but getting your hands on old games, it seems to be getting harder and harder. I mean, kind of, but kind of not. Like, companies aren't going to support all these old games for that kind of thing. The first way we want to kind of get into the whole point of video game preservation. You're familiar with what video game preservation is, right?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, that's cool.
Yes, sir. Let's get into it.
Basically, it's the idea of preserving, physical or digital games so future generations can basically play these titles. I mean, the importance of this is pretty obvious. I mean, one is a lot of people who are old like us. I mean, we're not that old, but we're hitting 30.
Yeah, we getting up there.
We're getting up there. We like to go back and reminisce and have the nostalgic moments of playing these old games that are on PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, GameCube, Game Boy Advance. I mean, hell, if you watched our previous video, Nintendo just turned around and been like, "Hey, we're going to give you guys GBA games, Game Boy Advance."
Yeah.
And I actually went back and watched some of the reactions for the Nintendo Direct.
Mm-hmm.
And when that got announcement, like, everybody was jumping out of the seat going, "Whoa, whoa, whoa." I'm like, God damn, dude. Like, we got some really hardcore fans of the old consoles. But yeah, nostalgia. Then you have newer generations who want to play older titles. I mean, I was actually quite surprised to see how many YouTubers and content creators out there that are actually going back and playing these old titles. Because I think it was me and you that had this discussion once before, off camera, where like you kind of want to look and go forward in technology. You're not really, the kind of guy who always goes back and looks back at these old titles.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the game and all that stuff. But I mean, with stuff like that, we're kind of in a weird state when it comes to video game preservation and stuff, like, because it's like you have all these old titles that they're remaking. We just got Dead Space, they're doing Resident Evil, you know what I'm saying? And I think even Nintendo Direct, they just revamped one of the Metroid games too.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So we're kind of in a weird state. I mean, do we wish that they do it with some more titles? Yeah, but I mean, it's kind of weird because we have certain games we can go back and play from PS2 and stuff like that on PlayStation, games from 360 on Xbox. I honestly think with the video game preservation, it's really weird to dictate the state of it because, in my opinion, I feel like they revamp older titles so they could, refresh their mind on new stuff that they want to work on. You know what I'm saying? To give themselves more time to work on newer games. Like, okay, we gonna do a remake for this game so we can work on this title that we showed in the last E3 or something like that. You know what I mean? So it's weird, but we're definitely in a weird state for it, though. That's a definite.
I mean, we are. And what's really weird is, you have these states where if you are somebody who owns original copies of, say, Dead Space, are the changes in Dead Space substantial enough for you to go back and, buy the game again, even though it's a remake? So that alone is kind of definitely of a interesting way and perspective to put at it. The other thing too that I was going to bring up too is that when it comes to these, game preservations, how they're being preserved and why sometimes going back to the originals and keeping them around is better is because sometimes, Dead Space or in a good example, but even Grand Theft Auto San Andreas,
Mm-hmm.
they got a trilogy, and the trilogy is absolute garbage. I don't care what people say; it's absolute trash. And not to mention in this new trilogy, you have uncut content from the original that never made it over. So you're missing radio stations,
Mm-hmm.
you're missing the multiplayer functionality. You're missing a lot of things that why having the originals is better, and just be seeing where we came from and like the history of it
Yeah.
honestly serves as a purpose on its own. So the other thing too is how video game currently being preserved. We have obviously backwards compatibility through
Mm-hmm.
physical and digital titles or through emulation like what Xbox is doing. Having the digital source code and being able to take this to newer generations is definitely important. But we all know that some companies don't really do a good job of doing that. Ironically, Nintendo is a very good example. They don't like to preserve their games in a way where it benefits the consumer, basically. For instance, the Nintendo eShop is going to be closing next month. And with that, there are thousands and thousands of digital only games that are going to basically be lost in the void forever. So it's either A, you're racing against the clock right now to buy these titles, or you're going to have to resort to more nefarious means of getting these games.
We can't sit here and act like emulation has not been a thing for years for us. Like, think about when the PSP was out. I had my PSP and I had a friend jailbreak it from me so I could get some of the games that Japan only had for the PSP. Like, they had like a Bleach game I really wanted. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But you could only get it out there. So I had my friend jailbreak it so I could download that game to my PSP. You know what I'm saying? I had about like maybe like 10 games you couldn't get in America on my PSP. That's always been a thing though. Like it's been around for a cool minute. I had before they put emulators on your phone that you could buy. I used to connect my phone to the computer and download all my games. I'm talking about I had before the DS emulator was able to be bought. I had
Right.
that downloaded to my phone. Game Boy, I had that downloaded to my phone. I had a bunch of different made up versions of Pokemon I had downloaded to my phone just because just like some of those games were really freaking good. Like for them to be like not even like made by a legit company, just like fan made Pokemon games, they were really
Right.
good. So
Yeah.
so I had
I mean,
emulating's been a thing for a while. Like,
especially with the new
I'm,
Steam Deck, because I have
mm-hmm,
got the Steam Deck and I have I can throw pretty much PlayStation 2, Xbox games. I can throw, I want to say some of the Nintendo old games like N64,
mm-hmm,
Game Boy, that kind of thing. And it also gets to a point where, this emulation, this homebrew is almost providing a slightly better experience than the original, which
mm-hmm,
is kind of, why I think a lot of these companies are not fond of the idea of giving people what they want. But Sony was going to close the PSP, the PS Vita, and the
mm-hmm,
PS3 shops. And they went ahead and closed the PSP shops, but they kept the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation Vita shops open indefinitely. And do you think it was because it was out of the kindness of their heart? No. Everyone kind of threw a fit about it. People voiced their concern about it. And that's where they kind of just, backtracked like, okay, all right, you guys win. But I mean, even with that, like my biggest concern right now with the PS3 library on PlayStation 5, it's only cloud based, meaning, even if I were going to play these titles again, if I wanted to,
mm-hmm.
it's only at their discretion and only what they put on, the
Mm-hmm.
PlayStation. And like, there's games out there that you aren't going to see ever again unless you get them through, emulation or ROMs or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And one example is actually Metal Gear Solid 4 for the PS3. Like I think you can stream that on your PlayStation 5, but do you really want to be tethered to an internet connection streaming that
Mm-hmm.
game? So That's kind
Yeah,
of how I feel about it.
I checked out a video. I don't know if it was a YouTube video or a TikTok video. I did see that PlayStation is talking about, you know what I'm saying, like how they have their premium essential, you know what I'm saying, PS Plus thing, that's supposedly going away. I think they might
What?
be going back. Yeah, I think they might be
No
going back to
way.
the old system. But also, with that being said, that whole system was implemented so you could also stream these games off the cloud and whoopie whoop. It was more of like a test for them to see how it was. Because think about it like that. Before this new system they implemented was here, we had what was it called? Where we could go back and play the PS3 games and the PS2 games and all that stuff.
There's
I forgot.
PlayStation Now.
Yeah. So we had that. You know, I think it's one of the things where how times are now. Yeah, some people are going back and actually using their PS4s and PS5s to play the older games, but a lot of gamers actually already have the PS2 or the PS3 still. You know what I'm saying? Just sitting there so they could play the games they want to play. You know what I mean?
As long as
So
as long as the entire game is on the disc, because that's another
yeah.
big problem. When you mentioned having the old systems, the biggest concern I have is when you have all these legacy consoles like PlayStation 2, PlayStation 1, Xbox, and you have resellers and scalpers turn around and sell them for like $300, $400. Or like, hey, you want to play the PlayStation 2, Metal Gear Solid 3? Well, how about you fork up over like $60, $70 for it? You know, I'll give you just the disc and not a complete version. I'm like,
I just gave my sister a PS4. I say like a couple months ago now, and before that, she had my PS2.
yeah.
And what she was doing was she found a website where she can get PS2 games, and she was going and buying those PS2 games. But those PS2 games, you know what I'm saying? I'm talking games I played back when I was in middle school was still like $30 to $40, you know what I'm saying, depending on what the game is. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So even if we don't like it, we're still kind of moving in that direction where people are gonna be buying the older games for $60 or $70 if the nostalgia is there, you know what I'm saying? If it was a game like they spent their whole time as a child playing. In my opinion, you know what I'm saying, I get the whole game preservation, but I feel
Yeah.
like with that we only going in one direction. I mean, you see how these games are looking nowadays and all of that stuff, and like these games look great. Like you said that you're playing Hogwarts. That game gets really good, bro. Like it's gonna get addictive, man. I'm telling you right
Oh,
now,
I'm
that
only
game
like,
is good.
bro, I'm
Yes,
only in the first chapter and I spent like 6, 7 hours just
like
exploring and doing things. But that's a good point you
telling
bring
you.
up. You're either stuck with three options. You get these games on these nefarious websites, you get these games through resellers, which are going to charge a fortune, or you buy them through the actual company and you even go with the remakes. I mean, there's times where the remakes are better. I mean, I imagine Dead Space is a lot better on the remake than it is on the original.
I've never played Dead Space. That's definitely the remake is definitely a game I intend to get
Okay.
because it's always looked cool. I just never got it, but I've seen a couple of friends like actually like play through the actual game, like the older one, and compared to this new one, like even some of my friends are saying, "Hey, they threw in some changes in the remake that wasn't even in the original game." You know what I'm saying? And how it looks graphically now is just it looks amazing. We in a different. How can I word this? How can I really word this? Uh, Basically, we're in a different state than we was 5 to 10 years ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like, will it be dope to still be able to play these older games? Yes, but I mean, in my opinion, I think it's just a phase that people will focus on for a short amount of time and then move on. Once we have newer games with newer graphics, you know what I'm saying, and developers start actually focusing a bit more on the content of the video game like they did back then, and people will move on. You know what I'm saying? Because yeah, it's like, oh, everybody's like, oh, I remember I used to play that game. Ooh, I get that, and then it drops and you don't get it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like I can honestly say I have Xbox. You know what I'm saying? I have Xbox Live. I have the Game Pass. I said there's a bunch of games on there I played back in the day, but I don't download them. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I know it feels good to have them sitting there in case I ever do, but I ain't never downloaded an older game that I played back in the day, to be honest with you, because it's
Right.
like that's not where we at right now. You
Well,
know what I'm saying? Like for those that do go back and play those older games, because I do follow some streamers that stream it on TikTok and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? That's dope. But you also gotta look at it like this though. They don't stay consistent with streaming that older game.
no.
Every person I've seen, they play this older game this day, this older game the next. You know what I'm saying? You don't see them go back and full on beat the older game. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, you make a good point because it's probably one of the reasons why we are seeing reboots and remakes happen is because when you go back and I mean, granted, it makes me sad because there'll be a game that I see that I remember from my childhood that pops up into my mind. I'm like, man, I remember freaking. I'm trying to think of like a really good example: Freedom Fighters on PlayStation 2,
Yeah.
or you know the old Spider-Man Sam Raimi games on
Yeah.
there, or like play you know anything from the older titles, and some of them still hold up. But you'll get into the game and you'll be like, man, this isn't how I remembered it, bro. The controls are hard. And like,
Oh, yeah.
man, this is
So
like
it's just like
graphics are dated and
it's
just
like
gameplay mechanics.
Ratchet and Clank, Crash Bandicoot, Spiral. You know what I'm saying? Y'all they were making all these games. Hey, could y'all, I don't know, remake Jack and Dexter real quick, help a brother out. You know what I'm saying? That was my shit. You know what I'm saying? So give us that. I say let us know what you guys think of game preservation. You know what I'm saying? Hit us with them comments. And you know, we're gonna go from here. We're gonna see how it goes. We got the Dead Space remake out. They come. We got
The
the
Resident Evil 4
Resident Evil
one.
one coming out, which I've already seen a couple videos where they're talking about. There's a whole new little stealth mechanic in that one that wasn't
Oh,
in the
I know.
original.
I know.
So
I'm gonna play it for sure.
yeah, so we definitely gonna see what gaming holds for this next year.
All right. Well, I think we're gonna end this video here. If you guys enjoyed it, definitely leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. This is LMAOMack. I'm Double Pulse. There'll be another video on screen somewhere. Go check that out. And we are signing out.
Later, y'all.
Later.